This past summer was full of transfer news around Newcastle United, Liverpool, and Alexander Isak. So I decided to play God on Football Manager and move Alexander Isak back to St James's Park and just pretend that this transfer saga didn't happen. So Isak no longer at Liverpool, Isak back at St James's Park, and let's just see what happens. We're going to simulate 5 years into the future until Isak has played right through his peak, be roughly 30 years old at the end of this period. And let's see what Newcastle United do. Can Isak fire them to glory, maybe win them the Premier League, maybe win them more trophies, or will Newcastle just continue to sort of bundle along in the top end of the Premier League without really doing all that much? So all that is coming up right now. If you enjoy the video, please leave a like and please subscribe. But here it is. Here is 5 years into the future of Alexander Isak staying at St James's Park. Season 1 of Newcastle having Alexander Isak back at the club. It's as though they didn't sell him to Liverpool, and is a 4th place finish. Liverpool win the title as well, so they don't miss Alexander Isak. 64 points, but Champions League football secured for the Magpies. Let's have a look at year 2 now. Year 2 sees Newcastle finish with 67 points, but finish 5th, just on the outside of the Champions League places. So it's just the Europa League for Newcastle, missing out on the final day of the season at the hands of Liverpool. Let's check out how it goes the next season, and it is a 6th place finish for Newcastle in the 3rd season, but no European football. Must have been trophies being won by teams that didn't qualify for the European places there. But yeah, no European football by the looks of it for Newcastle in this season, and a 6th place finish overall. Let's have a look at the next season. In 28-29 campaign, Newcastle finished in 3rd, just 6 points behind the eventual winners of the title, Arsenal, with 80 points overall, 66 goals scored. So a really strong campaign here. And let's see the current season, and it is another 3rd place finish for Newcastle in the current campaign. 74 points, 12 points behind Arsenal at the top. But yeah, decent run overall. Let's have a look at the individual seasons and see if Newcastle picked up any trophies in this time. Season 1 began with a 3-0 win against Aston Villa, followed by a 2-0 defeat against Liverpool, but a really strong period here in September. 2-1 win against Leeds, 2-1 win here in the Champions League, also progressing in the Carabao Cup. 4-1, defeating Arsenal here, 2-1, Alexander Isak bagging both. A win here against Marseille as well, and first defeat in a while coming against Brighton there, but followed up with a 1-0 win against Borussia Dortmund through the Carabao Cup, with a 4-0 win against Fulham, though did lose 2-0 against them a few days earlier in the Premier League. A defeat against Arsenal in the Champions League here, which I don't think should actually happen, but there we go, that's Football Manager for you. A 1-0 win against Bilbao though, Isak scoring. A win here against Bodo Glimt, a 0-0 draw against Sunderland in the derby, but down to 10 men for most of the game. Progression in the Carabao Cup as well, before a bit of a patchy Christmas period with 2 defeats in 3, including this one against Burnley. An FA Cup win against Preston North End. A Carabao Cup draw in the semi-final against Brighton, but a defeat on penalties in the away leg there. Also in here, a win against Aston Villa, defeat against Barcelona, and a draw against Athletic Madrid. And we keep going through here. A defeat against Arsenal in the FA Cup, so that dream's over. A win against Union SG in the Champions League before an actual exit in the next round against Napoli on penalties. Also in here, a win against Manchester United, which is nice. A 2-1 win against Sunderland, which I'm sure Newcastle fans would be happy with in the time that we had derby. And there we go, a 2-1 away win against Arsenal, also a nice one, before finishing the season with a 0-0 draw against Fulham. So no trophies for Newcastle in year 1. Let's check out year 2. And year 2 begins with 3 impressive wins. A 3-0 against Palace, a 4-0 against Ipswich with Voltemade scoring a hat-trick, and a 3-1 win against Sheffield United. And there's our boy Alexander Isak finally scoring for the season. But that's followed by 4 straight defeats out of the Carabao Cup, also 2 defeats in the Premier League, and a defeat against Barcelona in the Champions League. But that's followed with a 3-0 away win against Man United, a 1-0 win against Chelsea as well, and a win with Bodo Glimt. As we keep scrolling through here, We get a win against Middlesbrough in the Tyne Tees derby, which is always nice. A Champions League win against FC Copenhagen, and a win against Sunderland in the Premier League here, which is good for Newcastle. Rudiger clearly signed in there, big signing for Newcastle. That was followed by 3 defeats in a row and a draw. FA Cup win against Derby County, a draw here against PSG, and a win against Borussia Dortmund's nice, and a 3-1 win against Manchester United here. FA Cup progression comes against Peterborough, also progressing through the Champions League, beating FC Porto 4-0 on aggregate. A 4-0 win as well against Middlesbrough in the Tyne Tees derby. Barcelona knocks Newcastle out of the Champions League. Entertaining second leg, goes to extra time, but Newcastle lose it. Out of the FA Cup as well against Spurs. Another Tyne-Wear derby win against Sunderland, this one at the Stadium of Light. And there we go, the season ends with a 1-1 draw against Chelsea. Let's fast forward one more and see how Newcastle got on. And it starts with 2 wins in the Premier League against Fulham and Ipswich. Also a win on penalties against Port Vale. That looks like a very changed Newcastle team there. We'll keep going through. First win of the season in the Champions League comes against Galatasaray. A win against PSG here as well. We're out the Carabao Cup against Liverpool. Defeat against FC Porto, but a win against Partizan in the Champions League. A win here as well against Man United. Isak scoring 2 goals. A bit of a ropey December. A 2-2 away draw against Sunderland. Sunderland coming from 2-0 down to draw that one 2-2. A win there on Boxing Day against Leeds. Through the FA Cup against Southampton. Disappointing 4-0 defeat against Real Madrid, but it is Real Madrid. Progression in the Champions League, beating Benfica 3-1 on aggregate. Another win in the FA Cup as well against Norwich. Exit though of the Champions League against Liverpool, but sandwiched between that is a win against Charlton in the FA Cup. A 1-0 win against Sunderland. Marcus Rashford clearly a new signing in there, scoring. FA Cup defeat though against Man City. And the season ends on a nice little run here of 5 wins from 6, including a 2-1 win against Arsenal and a 3-1 win against Leeds. We'll look at the following campaign, see how things got on for Newcastle this time when they start the season in fine form. 5 straight wins, including a Derby Day win against Sunderland 2-1. Europa League this season for Newcastle, so maybe a chance at winning the trophy there. 1-0 win away at Liverpool, which doesn't happen often for this Newcastle team. A Carabao Cup defeat against Sunderland. Habib Diarra scoring the goal. I think it's the first time Sunderland have beaten Newcastle in this save. 3-0 win against Lech and a win here against Athletic Bilbao. 3-2 win against Karabakh as well. So strong run so far in the Europa League in December. Lots of positive results. The only blotch being a 2-1 defeat against Spurs. FA Cup, a 3-0 win against Coventry. A Premier League win against Sunderland 2-0 at St James's Park. And a win against Young Boys in the Europa League. FA Cup win again against Everton. Man City here a win 3-2. 3-0 up in this one, but held on towards the end. The Europa League, it's an exit against Wolfsburg and also an exit in the FA Cup. I think that happened the previous season. Newcastle go out of all 3 at the same time, but at the end of the season pretty positive again. Lots of good results just like the previous season. 3-0 win here against Arsenal, nice. A 2-1 win against Chelsea as well. Right, let's have a look at this current campaign. Can we get Newcastle a trophy to end this? And it starts with a 2-0 win at home against Middlesbrough, a 2-0 away win against Man United in there, 2-2 draw against Sunderland. Isak scoring both. Sunderland 1-0 up one, yeah, so Newcastle just eking out a draw there against Sunderland. 1-0 win in the Premier League against Arsenal away, Isak scoring. A win against Man United in the Champions League. Defeat against Barcelona though, but that is to be expected. Carabao Cup progression against Crystal Palace. We'll see if Newcastle can win that trophy again. Another Carabao Cup win here. Champions League form looks like it's going well as well. FA Cup win here against Oxford. 4-1 win in the Tyne Tees derby against Middlesbrough. See Bilal Al-Qanuso, a new signing in there. And some decent results in the Champions League. Carabao Cup exit though at the hands of Liverpool over 2 legs. Just missed that one up there, but yeah, 2-1. FA Cup win here against Lincoln City. And then a defeat in extra time against Man United. But Champions League's going well. Through against Lyon here. then through against PSG 3-1. Isak scoring 2 goals here as they knocked PSG out, but overall it was an exit the semi-final stage against Real Madrid, but I'm sure the atmosphere at St. James would have been very good for that. They finished with a 1-1 draw. So let's have a look at how Alexander Isak in particular did in this run. How many goals was he bagging? His last season at Newcastle, he scored 23 Premier League goals, but as we can see here, he never got close to that. 13, 20 in all competitions in Season 1. Season 2, 14 in all competitions. Season 3, 15 but 8 assists. 12 and 4 in Season 4, and this past season 21 and 8. So that was his best season, I think, was his final season. Let's have a look at Newcastle overall, see if they've still got Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe is no longer the manager, so let's have a look at their manager history. And Eddie Howe was sacked at the Christmas time in 26-27, and they've had Stefano Pioli in there since that point. He's been in there since 2028 January. So there we go. That is this Newcastle save. If you enjoyed watching this and seeing what the world would be like if Alexander Isak didn't leave, please leave a like. Please also subscribe as well, and we'll do more videos like this, simulations as to what could have happened in football. We'll catch you again for another video very soon.